In the year 2024, there was a man named Red Drumarts who had a podcast. No lad who had liberty for the first time and 20 guineas in his pocket is very sad, and Barry rode towards Hollywood, where it is always sunny, thinking not so much of the kind mother left alone in the home behind him, but tomorrow and all the wonders it would bring. Produce the
Yeah, I'm
players
Patrick.
of this game. Yeah, Patrick. And
I'm Lugia.
yeah, no,
I don't have anything clever.
I'm Red.
Do we want to be
Drumarts, not
talking
Red
in British
Berry.
accents the whole time?
This
Would
was the
you
thing.
like
It
to
was
be talking in a British accent the whole time?
technically this was like about like the Napoleonic Wars and stuff, and like Barry was in like the Prussian military, so there's like a lot of like kind of.
There's a
I'm not
Seven
sure
Years
which
War,
100% would
and
be accurate. The 7 Years
They
War.
they
I can't remember this.
briefly mentioned the
yeah, and
Revolutionary War.
also this one battle that isn't in history books, but for those who were there, man.
Yeah, sorry. I confused Napoleon because he did like a lot of research on Napoleon for some reason. Well, not for some reason. He wanted to make a Napoleon movie, but then that fell through.
Today we're talking about Barry Lyndon, but before we jump into that, let us raise our red solo cups in respect to country singer Toby Keith, because he passed away just a few days ago from stomach cancer at the age of 62. So, not too shabby. Pretty decent life, but still pretty upsetting. Are you guys familiar with Toby Keith at all?
No.
Name only.
Like, I
Um,
recognize the name, but I've never listened to any of his music.
I know only a handful of songs from him, but I think his most well-known song is Red Solo Cup, which is why I said let's raise a red solo cup. It is
Yeah, I've heard of that.
a very silly song, dude. Okay, so have you heard that one, Lugia?
Yeah.
That is such a silly song. And that one, and the only other song I really know from him is a song called Beers Ago, which is about a guy measuring his relationship in how many drinks he's had through it.
I think that's when you just start developing a problem.
Random question: what's your stance on country music?
I don't like it.
Yeah, I'm not really a fan, but like I don't know, I kind of like folk music, so I think there's like some or like I guess southern rock. So I guess there's some like folk, country, southern rock stuff.
I mean, there's
Um,
like maybe like one or two country songs that I genuinely like, but the whole genre collectively as a whole, no thank you.
What are the two that you like?
I have to think about that. I know there's I know
Probably
there's
Dolly
one.
Parton. Well, I think most people's like kind of default answer for like favorite country artist is like Dolly Parton or I guess Johnny Cash is more like country rock or like you know.
I don't mind country. It's not my favorite genre by a long shot, but I don't know. Like when I was a kid and we went on like long car trips, we had like a country playlist. So certain songs are nostalgic to me.
I guess would Life as a Highway count?
I'd say
That's more
so.
southern rock.
Rascal Flats
I
has a
think
few
that's
country songs.
I think that's more southern rock because like I wouldn't really consider Leonard Skinner or like the Eagles to be country rock. But okay, apparently Wikipedia says they're a country rock group, so fine, or a country music group, so I guess that counts. But I don't know. I remember like Johnny Cash back in the day, like was considered too rock for country. So like for some reason, like, I don't know when I hear it, I just think that's rock music. But like okay, I guess it's country.
Regardless, rest in peace, Toby Keith. Moving on away from that, let's talk Disney for a second, because this past week Disney announced some changes in their release schedule, or rather, new announcements. They dropped a whole bunch of sequels on us, which, granted, some of them we knew about. They want to do Toy Story 5, Zootopia 2, and Frozen 3 and 4. But in the middle of all that, out of nowhere, they announced, hey, by the way, Moana 2 is happening. It's coming out the end of this year. Okay, bye.
It's here's the thing with Moana too. You guys remember those Disney Toon sequels back in the day?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They were just 3 episodes of a TV show that turned into a movie. Yeah, Moana. Disney is, I guess, in such dire straits that they're going falling back to the '90s Disney Toon model. I think a lot of companies kind of realize that streaming honestly kind of killed them. So a lot of things that I think they were planning to be put to streaming, they're putting in theaters now because they're like, we will 100% make more money this way. So
Here's what confuses me though. They're doing a live action remake of Moana at the same time.
Wait, what?
That got postponed.
I know, but that itself, like, the movie's not even 10 years old yet.
Yeah, when did it come
Yeah.
out?
It's gonna.
2017?
And
16.
by the way,
16,
the
okay.
live action has the same cast. Like Dwayne is still gonna play Mao. He's just gonna play the same character he did
That I know.
like 10 years ago that he's doing now.
So it's like you're getting a sequel to Moana as well as a remake, okay? And again, this releases in 9 months. So
The live
kind
action
of a
remake
weird
or the sequel?
No, the sequel. The sequel releases in 9 months. Here's another actually. Here's something else that kind of is weird to me. Kind of funny though. So I looked into it. Lin-Manuel Miranda will not return to write the songs for the sequel. Instead, they got a duo named Abigail Barlow and Emily Bear. I have never heard of them before. Apparently, they're very young independent artists, and they have 2 notable credits to them. They are the creators of the unofficial Bridgerton musical, which I have heard of but know nothing about. And the other credit they have, and I swear to God this is real, they wrote the music for a TikTok musical sponsored by Taco Bell called Mexican Pizza, featuring
I swear
Dolly
to God,
Parton and
if you were gonna
Doja
say
Cat.
the Ratatouille musical, I would have lost my fucking mind.
No. Did you not hear what I said? This is a Taco Bell sponsored musical featuring Dolly Parton and Doja Cat on TikTok.
Okay, that's not as bad. After what
Really?
some friends put me
I
through,
think
but
that-
like, all right, Taco Bell makes
I
more
think
sense
that's
than
far
Ratatouille
crazier.
to me. For a
I
TikTok
think that's
musical, I think
I think that's
TikTok
far
would.
crazier.
I think Taco Bell would absolutely go for that for a marketing campaign.
All I know is about Taco Bell is that they apparently announced a new Cheez-It Crunch Wrap, but they announced it like in the same way that Apple announces new products, and that just kind of cracked me up.
Let's take a step back. Let's look at the facts here with Moana 2. Basically, what happened is Disney announced out of nowhere a sequel to an animated film 9 months before its release. That's a reworking of a Disney Plus series in production alongside a live action remake of the original movie that will feature music written by a duo responsible for a fan made musical adaptation of a Netflix series and a TikTok musical about a Taco Bell menu item. Take as long as you need to process that.
Speaking of streaming TV shows and films,
We finally have a reason to invest in Paramount Plus.
this year we're getting
The
Sonic
Knuckles
3 and
series.
Knuckles. Yeah, this year we're getting Sonic 3 and Knuckles.
Which one are we getting first? Sonic 3?
Knuckles.
We're
So
getting
it's
Knuckles
technically
first.
Knuckles and Sonic 3.
Sonic and Knuckles and 3.
Well, Knuckles and Sonic 3, whatever. But yes, we got a trailer for the Knuckles series. You guys seen it?
I have, yeah.
I
Honestly,
saw, like,
it looks
little
kind of
bit.
fun.
I'm indifferent. I mean, I'll be honest. I don't really like those movies. I just think they're like okay. So I don't know. I'm actually, despite that, I am excited for Sonic 3 just because they got Crush 40. So I'm like, fuck it, it's gonna be a good time. Like at least like the climax is gonna be good for that film. So yeah. Here's my question: So I know we kind of talked about Sonic 3 like last week, but I just kind of want to talk about it again. So since Amy isn't there, do you think they're just gonna like Tom is gonna fill her role, kind of like how Chris Thorndike filled Amy's role in Sonic X's Sonic Adventure 2 adaptation?
It's been
Guys
a
remember
long
Sonic
time
X?
since I've seen Sonic X, but Amy was in that though.
It wasn't that, yes, but for some reason they still made Chris Thorndike do everything Amy was supposed to do in the Sonic Adventure 2 storyline. Mostly the
I don't-
talking
Possible.
to Shadow or talking to Omega, one of those things.
I don't know if Tom would fulfill that role, like when the space colony arc is colliding towards Earth and Shadow's like, "Oh, my mission is fulfilled," and then I don't see Tom going up to Shadow like and saying, "People need you, Shadow. Think of all the people down there. It's what Maria would have wanted." I think it's gonna be someone else.
I think it might be Tom because here's the thing.
Now I'm just imagining James Marsden saying that.
Tom is gonna like 100% have a kid or something. So like I imagine like they're probably gonna be like Shadow might have something with like the kid or something is like, oh, you remind me of Maria or some shit like that, or like
What if it's
That's
the
why I would
dog
have
instead? They have a dog.
um
So what if it's the
yes.
dog?
Yeah, here's my question. They're gonna shoot. They're gonna show it. They're gonna show Maria getting shot. Maria gonna get gunned down. Do you think that's gonna happen?
Either she's gonna get gunned down, or they're gonna like cut before they fire the gun, like in Sonic X.
Well, so apparently Eggman's coming back, which is cool because I think.
I mean, we
There's a
talked
little
about
touch
that
of
last
dough.
week.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well. I don't know.
We can go back to the
His like
Knuckles series for a second.
his Indian assistant's coming back too, right? His live action Orbot
Yeah, and
Cubot.
I think the conspiracy theorist guy from the first movie is also working with Eggman this time.
Is the reason the space colony arc collides towards Earth is because Gerald Robotnik did not get a coupon for Olive Garden?
I think it's kind of funny. You know that conspiracy theory guy? Imagine he draws a picture of Sonic, but this time it's black with with red stripes.
Go back to the Knuckles series for a second. So I know they announced this a while ago. So this is going to be a kind of a bridge between the second movie and the third movie. I thought it was going to be like a prequel about Knuckles before Sonic 2.
Yeah.
I'm still cool with
I
this
kinda
though.
wonder if they're gonna like introduce like chaotix or something. Because every time I think of like a Knuckles thing, I'm like Knuckles and also like his boys on Angel Island. Is Angel Island even gonna be in this series? Probably not, because like
Because they're in the real world now.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe he goes to Australia and then Australia rises out of the sky.
Also, I think it's worth mentioning that Christopher Lloyd is going to play Pachacamac.
Oh shit, Christopher Lloyd's gonna be in it?
Yes, he's Pachacamac, which we get a
Yes.
brief glimpse of in the trailer. He doesn't say anything though. At last, Jim Carrey and Christopher Lloyd in the same place.
Have they ever been in a movie together?
I don't know. Do we have anything else to add? I think I've said all I wanted to say.
No, I think we're good.
I wonder they take
Yeah.
inspiration from Dragon Ball. It is a random connection with Dragon Ball that I never thought about with Sonic. It's like everyone's like, "Oh, collect the 7 Chaos Emeralds, and then you like, get your wish." That's how it is in like, I mean, Dragon Ball's like collect the 7 Dragon Balls. Um, I feel like the Knuckles stuff in the Sonic Adventure games is honestly like much more Dragon Ball like in vibe because he has like a radar and he's collecting like all the different shards to like kind of put together. And that's kind of like what Dragon Ball kind of is like. Everyone's like, yeah, it's just something I kind of noticed. It's like, oh yeah, wait. I guess they kind of like double dip there in the Dragon Ball influence. You guys ever seen Dragon Ball? Like, it's kind of like
I've
I think
seen
it's kind of
Z.
funny that like okay, because I always thought it was just kind of funny that like Sonic is Dragon Ball fan fiction, and yet like a lot of Sonic fans have not seen Dragon Ball. Which I was just always kind of weird, especially because like Dragon Ball's more popular than Sonic, like probably. But like I don't know, it's kind of weird. Now we're gonna be talking about someone that Goku could definitely beat, Barry Lyndon. So Barry Lyndon was a 1975 historical fictional drama written, directed, and produced by Stanley Kubrick, based on the 1844 novel The Luck of Barry Lyndon by William Makepeace Thackeray. I'll be going into some differences between the book and story, and this, like, I'll be going through the differences later on. But yeah, basically the film is about a Anglo-Irish rogue and basically a gold digger who marries a rich widow to climb up the social ladder. To give like a brief production history, basically Kubrick wanted to make a Napoleon biopic, but a different director made a movie called Waterloo, and that bombed. It's also kind of a shitty movie. And because that movie bombed, all the financiers for his Napoleon film just pulled out. And Kubrick had all this research, and he was like, all right, I already did the research. Why don't I adapt this book I like instead? That takes place during the 7 Years' Wars. And yeah, and it lasts roughly 8 months, taking place in well, the filming took place about over the course of 8 months in England, Ireland, and Germany. So basically, shot on site, which is pretty cool. The cinematography, which we'll definitely get into, but it was actually known as somewhat groundbreaking because mostly because of some scenes were entirely lit by candlelight and the heavy influence of paintings and the compositions, and apparently there's these things called double shots, which and like the slow backward zoom is somewhat kind of revolutionary for the time. I'll go more into some significance with those shots later, but yeah, this is somewhat considered one of the more underrated Kubrick works, which is I guess kind of funny why we're talking about it first. It's highly regarded by like people who have seen it consider it one of his best, but it's just one of those movies that like not a lot of people actually watch. because it's a bit, intimidating. This kind of long, slow, costume epic. It's not the kind of thing that really captures the imagination. I guess I'll just briefly go over the story. So basically, it opens with Redmond Barry, his father getting killed in the duel, and then Barry basically becoming infatuated with his cousin Nora. He then has a duel, I guess, with one of her suitors because he wants to kind of win her over. And basically kind of flees because and while he flees, he's basically robbed and ends up having to basically join the military. There's a sort of twist that the gun that he fired with was loaded with like a false charge, basically a non-lethal shot. So the person that he thought he killed didn't die, and this was basically just a ploy, a manipulation ploy to get rid of the annoying Redmond Barry, so they can just marry in peace. So now Barry's basically kind of stuck in the military, and yeah, eventually he gets I believe he's in the German army, but then he's conscripted into the Prussian army, and there's a lot of like he honestly kind of fights on like multiple fronts. It's kind of interesting. But yeah, eventually, he meets a gambler who kind of becomes he kind of has a lot of sort of father figures because there's his military commander, and then later he's kind of sent to spy on this gambler, but then he becomes friends with the gambler because they kind of have similar origins, and then eventually he seduces Lady Lyndon, and they become married, and I guess because of Lady Lyndon's higher status, Barry takes her name and goes from Redmond Barry to Barry Lyndon. Then we kind of follow part two of the story, which is I guess if we're gonna call it the rise and fall. Now we're seeing the fall where we have his kind of tumultuous relationship with Lady Lyndon. I actually thought like the relationship was kind of interesting because like he's kind of abusive, but there actually is like sort of implications towards the end that they actually did kind of love each other. So I always thought that was kind of interesting. But yeah, so the marriage is kind of like shitty, but he has a good father. They definitely sort of connect over the father of his son. He has a stepson that he is very shitty to, and kind of the second half is basically us kind of exploring, the resentment that his stepson kind of builds towards him, and just the kind of Barry trying to kind of like establish himself. So like I guess his future is kind of secured, but him just fucking up irreparably. It's almost like a sort of Great Gatsby sort of thing where like they kind of look down on him, and he kind of does ultimately kind of give them reason to be down on him because he's not the most honorable character, but like there's obviously lots of shades of gray. I think when I pitched this to you guys, I kind of made it as like this big kind of costume epic about like a significant figure, but like what if said figure wasn't significant? This was initially meant to be a Napoleon thing, who's like such probably one of the most important men in history, like next to like Caesar and Hitler. And instead, what if we made a movie about, like we would a movie about Napoleon, but for someone that isn't significant. But in many ways, his life still kind of mirrors Napoleon because it's about a guy who has wants control over his life and control over others, but ultimately just unforeseen things kind of result in him not having control, and then he's kind of exiled at the end. I think one of the most significant parts is ultimately Barry's stepson Bullington and him have a duel at the end of the film. Bullington fucks up, and Barry, and we're never kind of really given insight into him, into why, but he decides to and basically spare Bullington, which I guess later I'll kind of go into much more detail about kind of significance about that. And yeah, that's kind of the general plot summary. General thoughts, what did you guys think? Yay or nay? Did you have time to absorb it, I guess?
I think so. I just saw this a
Did you
couple
think it
days
was
ago,
boring?
but I think I've got a grasp of the whole story, and I gotta say, it was better than I thought it would be. The time period and location this movie takes place in is generally not my cup of tea personally. I don't really like colonial slash Victorian era time periods where everyone's like all
Yeah,
sophisticated and powdered wigs and all
I'm in a
that.
similar boat. That's not my thing.
see, yeah, that's the thing. I used to be like that, but basically this movie and Amadeus those two films basically kind of changed my mind. Where I'm like, shit, are some of these good? Like because I don't know. That was just exciting. And like here, what I kind of like about I guess this film is like the first half is like somewhat exciting. You know, there's like a lot of action. There's a lot of like you kind of followed like the lower class, and then like the sophisticated stuff is in the second half, and it's all like you can very and you kind of relate to Barry because he feels out of place, and it's kind of intentionally kind of boring. Everything's kind of flattened out. You know, earlier stuff you had saw a lot of like handheld, and there's like that one scene was like fighting the dude. That's honestly like shot like kind of cool. And then in the second half, everything's shot like a painting. Everything's so still. Everything's kind of lifeless. You know, I mentioned those double shots that are like with the long backward zoom. And it's always like all those backward zoom. It flattens out the image to make it look more and more like a painting, but also make Barry feel so a lot smaller. And I always thought like that was kind of interesting how like the first half and the second half are kind of shot differently. Yeah, go on. I don't know if I could
That's no.
elaborate on
That's
anything.
basically just what I wanted to say. Although you did mention the first half, I I thought the first half, or at least a little bit of it, reminded me of Catch Me If You Can, because as
Yeah,
Barry is trying to find a place to hide, and when he keeps meeting all these different people, he just comes up with different aliases just to get by. But he does get
yeah,
found out
exactly.
eventually.
He's very much a con man. That's what it is. Yeah.
So this movie is not what I was expecting it to be, because I mean, with a title like Barry Lyndon, I really thought this was going to be about the 1964 U.S. presidential election. You know, the one between Barry Goldwater and Lyndon Johnson. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But
Yeah, yeah, I know.
that that said, I am serious when I say this movie wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Because I had never heard of this film before, and typing Barry Lyndon into Google, the image stills that came up were of men in war uniforms. And given its 3 hour runtime, I was thinking, oh, so it's like a 3 hour serious war epic about a real life historical figure named Barry Lyndon. Okay. It was not. I mean, for the first hour, it seemed like it was going that direction, but then I learned Barry Lyndon never actually existed, and the war stuff stops, and I'm like, oh, okay.
He wasn't even
And
Barry
it's
Lyndon
interesting.
during those war scenes
During the
anyway.
war, yeah.
And
It
it's
was Edmund
interesting you
Barry.
bring up. It's interesting, Lugia, that you bring up Catch Me If You Can as a comparison because, in my mind, what this movie ended up being was what I like to call period piece Forrest Gump, because you're basically following this nobody who gets himself into these huge historical scenarios and a bunch of characters, and he just kind of rolls with the punches, and you see his time in the war and his love life. But in the end, I did like it.
I always thought it was like kind of an interesting sort of character study. So how do I put this? Okay, so let me actually get into the book. So the book is very different from the film. Not in terms of story, but in terms of presentation. The book is a first person account. It is a first person perspective. It's basically like Redmond Barry is writing his entire life. Like you're reading kind of his memoirs. That's what it is. And because of that, there's a heavy case of unreliable narrator. It's kind of interesting. He tries to make himself seem cooler, try to make himself seem like the Catch Me If You Can guy. But but through it you can kind of infer that he is kind of a pathetic loser. And who's not as clever as he thinks he is. And I always thought that was kind of interesting because obviously this film takes a completely different perspective where it's the more of an objective look. You only see the outside and you're actually never really let into his interior. And I think like what Kubrick saw is that he saw kind of like the poker stuff, the gambling stuff, and he was like, okay, in poker, no one ever like reveals their cards. Everyone's trying to win, but they never like kind of reveal their true selves. And he was like, okay, so he was like, I think he wants to kind of lean into that because like Barry Lyndon never really shows his cards, and you're kind of like never let into his
I think you get a
let
bit
into
of a
himself.
glimpse of his feelings during that last shootout
Yeah, that's
with
exactly what I was gonna
Bollington.
say.
Yeah.
That last shootout to me was like there is so much you can read into that, and that's kind of like what I want to talk about. Because like here's the thing, Barry Lyndon is kind of a scumbag. He has no issues killing people. He has killed people many times throughout the film, and yet he doesn't. And like here, and like I always thought like why, and I'm always wondering why, because like a lot of his moves are kind of calculated, but in what sense are they calculated here? Like, does he think it's gonna be better for him? Do you think it's gonna like ruin his reputation, or since he lost his kid? does he maybe want to salvage the one relationship he has in his life,
That
or
that is what I
we know,
thought. I thought because he already lost Brian, like he didn't want to like lose his whole family essentially, and his one chance at a future
yeah. So like,
bloodline was like right there in front of him.
yeah. See, that's what I was. Well, it's not even his bloodline, but yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking like, is it emotional or is it calculated like every other kind of choice he's done throughout the rest of the film? Because like throughout the rest of the film, like he would make a choice like this if he thinks like it would be better for him. And like, yes, sparing him would probably be better for him in the long run. I mean, there's a clear like kind of parallel between the first and the second half. Like, I don't know if you remember, but like the way the fight earlier in the film was shot, where he was kind of like getting sort of bullied by someone in the fist fight. They kind of shoot him spanking his stepson in the same way with that same handheld camera, except this time he's the bully. And then like this duel kind of mirrors the duel earlier in the film, where like, this time Barry decides not to shoot. But in both kind of cases, like, I kind of mentioned how earlier how I think it's kind of about a guy trying to like control his life, but like having no control. I always thought like almost all like the big choices in Barry's life were like not even like due to him. He really had no control in his life. But he had control over the details, and I think part of it might be almost like that here, because like regardless, he knows this situation is going to end with him. He's probably going to get exiled, whether he kills the kid or not. And it does happen. I guess he just part of me wonders like he just wanted to like them to kind of understood that he has no choice. So does he want to go out, getting revenge, being kind of bitter? Or does he want to go out, having some sense of like decency? Also, again, I do think for as shitty as he is to his wife, I do think that there is like they show these kind of glimpses of something. At the end, there's kind of like I think they almost imply a kind of longing where like Barry misses his wife and his wife misses him, and I almost wonder like he may not like the kid, but it's his wife's kid. He's not gonna kill him. So like I don't know. I think like the most interesting part about Barry Lyndon is like kind of like a painting. You're only given the exterior, and you kind of have to interpret the interior. And I feel like, and obviously Kubrick intentionally wanted to feel like a painting. From the handheld first half to slowly getting more and more still, more and more like we're seeing kind of history. And then obviously, the cinematography of this film is beautiful, probably the best shot film ever made, and so many shots in the film look like paintings.
Just a lot of zooms into wide shots as well.
And like the way zoom lenses work is it kind of flattens out the image too, so it makes it look even more like a painting. Like when they zoom out, so I always thought that was kind of interesting. Like one of my favorite shots from the movie is like right after he kind of beats his kid, his step kid. They have this shot of him kind of contemplating, and then it slowly zooms out, and we see him like being dwarfed out, and really see kind of how small he is. And it was like that was pretty cool. Yeah. I still not mentioned the cinematography. We kind of like never we didn't talk about the technicals. Do you guys agree with me that this is probably the best shot film ever made? Or like one of
One
the best
of.
shot film? Like
One
this,
of.
Apocalypse Now. Like these are fucking. This is a fucking beautiful movie. Oh my god.
I need to rewatch it again just to catch all the subtle details they do with the cinematography. But like
Yeah, it's like
from my first viewing, yeah, no, this was still shot really well.
fucking colors and like again. I think like the composition. Like I feel like people say like movies are like every frame is a painting. This is like the only film where I'm like, you could like genuinely like take a screenshot of it and like put like a filter over it, and I think most people think it actually is a painting. I mean,
Every frame's of painting, buddy. This is a fucking museum.
speaking of paintings, I also really like that one scene where Barry Lyndon, where like I guess that aristocrat is kind of like showing him around his art gallery, and like I think like the way Barry describes it is like he very clearly like describes it in a way where he has no knowledge and he just kind of like glances at it and is like pays it no mind. And I think like it kind of mirrors with the aristocrat, like kind of views Barry the same way. He kind of pays him no mind.
I want to ask a question. So you said the original book this is based on, it was told from Barry's perspective,
Yeah, like a first person kind of unreliable narrator perspective.
whereas here it's just a nameless, unknown narrator, right?
It's not even like the narrator. It's just like even if you cut out the narrator, like I think the movie would work. But it's just like us seeing it from the outside, looking in. We never really get a glimpse of his interiority that much. It's more of like us just having to observe the outside and kind of determine it for ourselves.
I'm cool with the narration. I do have a question though. Do you guys think the narration got a bit excessive in the second half of the movie?
Honestly, no.
Really, yeah. I liked it.
Why?
because
What
there's
about it
one
felt intrusive to
Yeah, what
you?
about it bothered you?
there's one part that in particular I felt like was that really necessary, and that is right before Brian's death, they basically say it's gonna happen.
I kind of thought that was like meant to almost kind of fall into the Shakespearean tradition where like tragedy is a the thing with tragedies is like you very much get like
I guess, but
well I guess
also
one I think they didn't want to just feel kind of like a random event and like kind of more play into the fate idea because I feel like this movie very much wanted to like play into the idea that everything is kind of like predestined and like this
I
is
get that, but I also feel like I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like his death was kind of foreshadowed early on because at the very beginning of the movie, the very first thing that happens is Barry's father buys a horse and then he dies.
oh
And with Brian,
that
he buys a horse for his son and then he dies.
is that is a sharp observation, yeah, actually.
Because the entire movie I'm thinking, all right, that's the very first bit of information that happened. Why? And then this is the only other time in the movie where there's horse and death related to each other. And I'm like, oh, so that's what that was. But why did they say it was going to happen? Why did we need the narrator to tell us?
Huh. I was
I
just
don't
kind of
know. That
thought
was just my takeaway.
that's fair. That's fair. But yeah, I mean, I do think there's like a very much like a running theme of like fatherhood here because Barry had no father, and he kept on looking for father figures with his military commander, the con artist, all that kind of stuff, and then later he becomes a father, and I feel like he very clearly like loves his son and dotes on him, spoils him. I think it's because he wants to be the father he never had, and I guess this kind of spoiled and like kind of almost reckless love kind of ultimately like leads to his son's death, which is kind of an ironic fate. Honestly, I feel like this movie kind of like really like makes you think that Barry is kind of like a shitty guy. But despite showing that he's kind of like a piece of shit, his love for his kid is like is like just shown and unambiguously to be admirable. I always thought that was kind of like interesting.
Much to
Every
Bullingdon's
character kind of feels
dismay.
gray. Yeah, every
Mm.
character is kind of like there's shades of gray where you kind of like understand them. So with the acting, I think Kubrick himself said this, but like this almost feels like a silent film where like almost like none of the dialogue is like really important. In fact, like I cannot think of like almost any lines that Barry actually says. Like almost the entire time, like I think of this movie, I just think of it as like in silent images and just like the look on like Barry's face. I almost feel like just Kubrick hired this actor just because of like the way he looks. Yeah, this almost feels like a silent movie to me, and I think Kubrick himself said that he thinks it's a silent movie, and almost like the narrator kind of functions the same way. There's like stills in. I don't know if you ever seen like a silent film, but like they have a bunch of. Well, I mean, you have Dive. I made you watch one, but like sometimes like there'll be like an omniscient narrator and like the dialogue stills in
Yeah, and then
silent
they
films. And stuff.
pause to a wall of text.
Yeah, and like kind of what the narrator kind of reminds me of, more of like the kind of similar kind of omniscient kind of narrator in the silent film. So like, yeah, the acting here kind of remind me of a silent film where like if you watch this entire movie on mute, you'd probably still understand it. Or like if you just cut all the dialogue out, you'd still like be able to fully understand it just because of, like not only like just because like the because of the acting, because like the film intentionally like wants you to sort of look into their faces and like into the details and stuff. Again, kind of reminds me like Passion of Joan of Arc, silent film I made you guys watch. Where like we all the dialogue and like all the acting are like kind of shown separately. So like during the acting parts, you just kind of have to really focus on their face and kind of like determine it what they're feeling before you even like find out what they're saying. And I was like, okay, interesting. We kind of mentioned this earlier how we thought this was going to be kind of stuffy and boring. When did like I'm just talking like in a personal life, but when did like costume dramas become boring to us? Because I remember like as a kid learning about like the Revolutionary War, that was cool. Like I feel like everyone
Um,
thought that like the Revolutionary War was cool. Like when we were learning that in history class, and then like suddenly after like a certain time period in our lives, it just kind of became like boring history crap, and it was like, huh.
I think it's when we had to learn it again and again and again because history classes would do that. Like you would learn about the Revolutionary War in like the third grade, and then sixth grade you would learn about it again, and then freshman year, so on and so forth.
I remember seventh grade, everyone in my class, like my teacher was very confused because in seventh grade when we learned about the Revolutionary War again, that summer I think Assassin's Creed 3 came out. So like every kid I knew played Assassin's Creed 3, or at least like because Assassin's Creed 3 was out, a lot more people were talking about the Revolutionary War. So like we kind of came in, and then the teacher was like talking about this stuff, and everyone was like already like knew. It's like when you learn about Greek mythology, and like a bunch of Percy Jackson kids are in the class. It's like, okay, well, everyone kind of already knows what's going on. But yeah.
Lugia, question. Do you remember in 7th grade history class when we watched Glory?
I do, yeah.
You guys watch Glory?
We did.
We
I
did,
didn't
yeah.
watch that. That's
I
weird.
remember we
Okay.
had to have like a waiver because we were too young to see it. Well, we were the unintended audience. Like we were still like 13, 14 years old at the time. And it was
Remember, our
rated R
teacher had
film.
us watch it and then basically write our opinions about it.
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
liking it.
I saw it
I
one time afterwards and it was
huge
still
fan of
good.
Glory. I'm not really a big
I
fan
haven't
of
seen
Glory.
it since.
It's been a while. I never saw that in history class in middle school. I think in middle school I remember seeing us. I remember 8th grade seeing some stuff, but like I remember like in 7th grade history, I remember learning some sort of revolutionary thing. I don't remember.
I also remember my freshman year history class, we watched Warhorse. You guys ever seen Warhorse?
No.
I think that's Spielberg, right?
That is Spielberg.
That was one of
That
those
and
Spielberg movies I've never seen.
whenever I think of Warhorse, the one scene that I always immediately think of is when the horse plows straight through a stone. I mean, he's hooked up to the plow, whatever. But like he cuts a stone right in half, and the whole class basically went, "Okay, bullshit."
I remember, and I think you were here for that, Patrick. But remember when they played like Pay It Forward that one year?
What?
8th
What?
grade, they played this movie Paid Forward.
I I don't remember.
Okay. No, I remember I was there with you just because I was cracking jokes because
What is Paid Forward? What is it about?
Haley Joel Osment. It's the one with like Haley
You
Joel
gotta get
Osment. He's like,
you gotta give me more than that.
okay, basically like rather than like paying it back, he's like, all right, I'm gonna help you and you need to help the other guy. And like he was thinking like if you help, if we do that, it's kind of like pyramid scheme of helping, then like the world be a better place. And it was I have no idea like why. I think like it was like for the English class. I don't know why we played it. It had nothing to do with it. I think they played at the end of the year. And I remember the teacher getting upset because kids kind of made fun of the ending because Haley Joel Osment's character gets stabbed to death. Yeah, that's how the movie ends. The kid gets stabbed to death, gets shanked, and I'm like, "Oh, okay. What
I'm
the
looking at
hell?"
screenshots. I do not remember this movie.
Okay, so I guess this is your furry vengeance because I remember watching this with you because you were sitting next to me. Okay, yeah, interesting.
This
Um,
was 8th grade?
8th grade, yeah, like towards the end of the year
What
when like
class was it?
class, I think was I think it was like the English teacher was just like playing a movie at lunch or something, so everyone was just like, "Oh yeah, why not?" Like so, like it wasn't even in class.
Sorry to
We
say
ate lunch
I
together.
don't I do not remember at all.
I only remember just because that ending was like so fucking bad shit. I was like, what the fuck? Also, I think Kevin Spacey is in it and he has erectile dysfunction, and I'm like, okay. Weird. There's a lot of movies I've seen in school that I don't know why I saw them. When I was in high school, they played Hotel Rwanda, or I think no, that was in middle school too. I think that I don't know. They played Hotel Rwanda one year for me in school. I don't even think we talked about the Rwandan genocide in our history class. They just played it for no reason, and it was
Alright, this is gonna be on the
traumatizing.
test. Just watch the movie. You don't need to turn your textbooks to page 210.
Yeah, and one of my teachers put on Mississippi Burning. That was actually a good movie. I liked that movie quite a bit. And like he was like, this is a true story, and he actually gave us a challenge. It's like, there's one scene in this that isn't true at all. I want you to see if you can guess it. I don't know why he played it because it didn't have much relevance to what we were learning. I mean, we kind of it's like we didn't really get into the civil rights movements until like later that year. That year we were much more focused on World War II. Like I don't know, for some reason he played that. One year we did Gandhi. That one actually was kind of relevant.
And these were all for your history classes?
Yeah, all for history classes.
I don't really
And like
remember
sometimes,
watching a whole lot of movies for history. I remember watching more movies for English, but then again, that was in high
yeah,
school, not so
no,
much middle school.
we definitely saw movies in English. I mean, we've talked about one of the movies we saw in English class here. We all saw The Outsiders in English class.
We did, yeah.
I distinctly remember one year us seeing. I'm not sure if this was in high school or middle school because it kind of blends together for
Oh,
me.
I know
But
you guys saw the Outsiders movie. I never did. I read the book.
oh, did they ever play Romeo plus Juliet for you?
Yes.
Yes, they did.
Okay, so okay, so it definitely was middle school. That was so fucking funny, man.
That
I
was
remember
that
I
was
came to
high
my
school for
class.
me. That was
Yeah, that
freshman
was high
year.
school too.
Okay, that was high school for me too then. Because okay, that explains it. Okay, so I
I
guess
just
just
remember
every middle
watching it.
school just
Everybody
that
was
was funny as
confused.
fuck. Yeah.
I remember
What was really
one
funny is
of my
that
classmates when watching that movie, he was so fucking mad that they kept calling the guns swords and the cars horses.
I laughed my ass off when they did that. A lot of kids in my class. And here's the funny thing is that's not the only Baz Luhrmann movie I saw that year because we read The Great Gatsby that year too, and then they played The Great Gatsby movie.
I've never had to read The Great Gatsby.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know why.
Well, you like
None of the English classes I took had me read it.
I had to for mine, and we did watch the movie too. So that's
well,
weird.
we watched the DiCaprio movie. Which movie did you see?
Yeah, I saw the
Did you see the
DiCaprio one too.
Okay, yeah, the funny one. All right, yeah. Because like there's like more sophisticated ones. If you like Barry Lyndon, I'd recommend like you check out The Great Gatsby. Maybe the more sophisticated ones, not the fucking Baz Luhrmann one. But oh my god, dude, I remember people in my class they're fucking like clapping when the because you remember that scene in the book where like where Gatsby's introduced and like they emphasize the smile and whatnot. It was like oh the old sport
Yeah.
and like the scene where like Leonardo DiCaprio's Gatsby's like first introduced was like so fucking over edited. Like everyone was just like clapping and laughing their ass. I was like, what the fuck is this, man? God, yeah, The Great Gatsby is a funny fucking movie. All Baz Luhrmann's movies are like kind of terrible, but I kind of love them.
No, you liked Elvis.
Yeah, yeah. But here's the thing: Elvis is like as a figure, he actually is kind of like crazy. So like it fits more with him. But like Great Gatsby, I feel like they were. I mean, I guess Great Gatsby kind of stupid too. I mean, yeah, whatever. It all works, but still, I figure like might as well let's just go through like movies we had to see for school.
Okay, so this
That's
is
what
where
this
the
episode's.
tangent's leading to now.
Yeah, that's what all the tangents like. We eventually always have like some tangent, but yeah. They show like a bunch of like weird ass movies in school. You remember for the standardized tests we took in middle school and high school and all that stuff? Actually, we didn't take them in high
Mhm.
school, but the standardized tests we took in middle school.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys were in this with me, but every time we were done with the test, there was always like 4 hours left until we went back to class, so that they would always play a movie for us, and it would always be the most random fucking movies. Um, I mention this because one year my teacher only had one DVD. It was The
It was The
Cat
Cat
in
in
the
the
Oh
Hat,
Hat.
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember this
You've
story.
told us this story.
So every day for a week, they played The Cat in the Hat 2 or 3 times in a row to the point where
Dude,
like
you're
I
living the dream.
everyone in that room practically memorized the fucking movie. I also remember one year, for some reason, it was really funny. It was like the year Frozen and Toy Story 3 came out. Like those years, for some reason, the teacher who was managing the standardized test for us had like a bootleg, like a Russian bootleg of the thing on DVDs. So like he just played the Russian bootleg of Toy Story 3. It was like a cam rip, and we were like, just put on like a normal movie, man. What the fuck? Like you did for Frozen 2, and I was like, why? Why are you doing this? I think like by the time the Frozen one, like the actual Frozen DVD was out too. By the time like he put on the Frozen bootlegs, it was like, why are you playing the Frozen bootleg? I think Netflix existed like that year too. So I think after a while, you just like try to pull up something on Netflix. What was the point of high school? I'm trying to think of it. I think they just want to like keep kids occupied for, 'cause they don't want us roaming around in the streets.
Pretty
So yeah.
much.
Oh well. 'Cause, like, I'm being honest, like, almost everything I learned in high school, I relearned in college, so I was like, "What was the point of me learning it in high school then? What was the stress? What was all that for? Fuck you. God damn it. What was the point of it?"
Really hammer it in so you remember it.
Like, I didn't even, like, need to hammer it in. Like, I was a computer science major. Why do I need to take chemistry? Again! 3 times I learned the same fucking chemistry.
It
It's
builds
not like
character.
it's not like history or English. Like, history or English, I think, like, revisiting a book, like, years later actually like changes your perspective on things. Same with history, with like, because like, we mentioned how we learned about the Revolutionary War like over and over again, but like, you know what? There's a difference between when I learned it in elementary school and I learned it in middle school, because when I learned it in elementary school, I was like, here's all like the good things about Christopher Columbus. And then in middle school, he was like, okay, so there were some rapes we need to address. And it was like, oh, okay. Like, it was like, Like, they tell us like the basic thing that our simple child mind can understand, and then they tell us like more details later. Like that's kind of how science and math is like supposed to work, but like they just repeated the information. They didn't like build on it. It's not like how like I don't know, like in wasn't like how like I don't know, like when you first learn about like matter, you're like, oh, there's three states of matter, and then later it's like, okay, there's actually like four, but plasma is really complicated, so we're gonna need like go into a lot more time. Or it's like, it's like, oh, like, or when in math when they teach us about negative numbers, where it's like, okay, like they didn't teach us that like before imaginary numbers because that's too complicated to like let in first. Like you need to kind of like build the foundation. It was like, I don't know. Like here, it just kind of felt like they repeated the crap. Whatever. Ranting against the education system. Whatever. Most kids are gonna be really dumb now anyway. From understand, they give iPads to elementary school kids now. So
I can wrap this all around again. Barry Lyndon is a good movie.
yes, and he is
Seamless.
Barry Lyndon was a decent father. Barry Lyndon would not give his child an iPad.
I don't think he even
Or
knows
make
what an
him
iPad
stupid.
is.
He will let his child sleep by a burning candle all night. That's not a fire hazard.
That's just a nightlight. That's just old. That's retro nightlights. Nightlights didn't exist back then, so you needed a candle.
Well, yeah, but all night.
Listen, houses used to. I don't know. Those houses were made of like sturdy
There are
material.
drapes
Hey, at
right
least they didn't
there.
have to pay an electric bill.
Those buildings were. I don't know if were there cases of like accidental house fires like in mansions being a thing back in the day. I've never heard about this. I feel like that was much more of a modern thing. I don't know. Electrical failures.
But I wanted to say one more thing I want to mention is that this movie has the most courteous robbery ever caught on film. Because Barry is just trotting along on his horse, and these two guys mug him. They take his horse and his guineas, and he says, "Actually, I need my horse because I need to get a few miles up the road." And the guy says, "You just walk it. I would take your shoes, but it's a long walk. I don't want you to wear out your feet. Have at it." At least
It
they
felt
let
like
him
he was
keep the
getting robbed by
shoes.
like a Santa Claus.
The
Like I could
meanest
see that.
Canadian.
I could imagine that dude being like a Santa Claus type of guy because like that's just kind of the vibe it gave me. It was like, oh okay,
I don't know. It made me laugh. We'll take your horse, we'll take your guineas, but no, don't wear out your feet. Take your shoes. Keep them.
yeah. Why couldn't Shrek give that family that courtesy? Remember when Shrek robbed those people in Shrek 2?
I will repay you unless I can't find you or I forget. Do we have anything else to add about Barry Lyndon?
We didn't talk about the score. I kind of like the motif, the kind of fancy motif.
It's about what I expected for a film that's trying to recapture this era of time. Like a
Yeah,
lot of
it's very kind of standard, but
not symphonic. Like what's the word I'm looking for? Just like a standard like violin,
classical,
classical. Yeah, yeah.
melodic. Okay then. That was Barry Lyndon. If you liked Barry Lyndon, I would recommend, I guess, Catch Me If You Can, The Great Gatsby. I'd also recommend Once Upon a Time in America. That's a kind of gangster epic, but I feel it's a gangster epic that kind of feels much more in tune with the tone here. I guess maybe The Godfather as well, which
This
is kind of
kind of
fitting
did
since
remind me a little bit of The Godfather Part 2.
yeah,
Or at least the second half did.
yeah, like mostly like the Fall of Michael stuff. Kind of reminds me of that. Yeah, Fall of Barry, Fall of Michael.
The death
Again,
of
I think
Barry Lyndon.
I think I mentioned Once Upon a Time in America, like in pairing with Godf- I think I mentioned Once Upon a Time in America, like when we talked about The Godfather too. So yeah, I guess all three of these movies kind of remind me of each other. I guess also check out Amadeus. Amadeus is like really nothing like this film, but it's also kind of like a costume drama that's like exciting and might
So
like change your
similar
perspective on
aesthetics.
stuff. Yeah, similar aesthetics and like they'll kind of make you rethink it. And I guess there are like some actual parallels, I guess, because like okay, there actually are some parallels. Another thing about it, I'd also recommend Master and Commander. If you like maybe more of the war half of the first half. So yeah, Master and Commander and Barry Lyndon are kind of like the two costume dramas I'd recommend. So yeah,
All right. All right, Lugia, your turn.
Okay. So what I got planned is a double feature, but it's okay because both of these movies are less than an hour.
Okay.
So are we ready to dip our toes into some holy water?
What?
We're
We're getting
gonna
religious?
we're getting a little religious here. So
okay.
both of these movies are directed by a man named Rich Cristiano.
Oh, is this a So Bad Good movie?
They could be.
Rich
So
Cristiano. No.
I've been somewhat fascinated by this man's library of movies. I've only seen 2 movies, and they are going to be the 2 movies we're going to be talking about next week.
Okay.
Okay.
But I
Is
do.
this a movie that we should watch together?
We could watch these together, yeah. So the movies that I have in mind are Second Glance and The Appointment. Again, both done by Rich Cristiano.
Second glance in
That's
the
not even-
appointment? I've never heard of these.
See, he has a Wikipedia page, but these films are not like he has some individual films that have Wikipedia pages too, but Second Glance isn't one of them. What's the second one? The Appointment?
Yes, that one's a
That's
short
a-
film.
Okay. I was like, is that interesting? Okay, so Second Glance, 1992, director Rich Cristiano.
And you could argue
what's
we
the other
already
one?
talked about a religious movie with Dogma, but that one's more of a parody.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess The Godfather, there's a lot of Catholicism there, but that's more of like just about American culture.
But these movies are like straight up Christian.
Okay, yeah. The Appointment, and then his first feature film, his last short film, and his first feature film of Rich Cristiano. That guy looks Italian. Like he reminds me of Ray Romano. Like that's his face. I'm gonna look him up, and if he doesn't sound like Ray Romano, I'm gonna be very disappointed. Okay, so next week we're getting religious. Take out your Bibles, rev up your confessional booths. That's not how it works.
Confess your sins.
Yeah, confess your sins. Take
Pick
out
a
your
god and
Bibles.
pray.
Attend mass. Foreskins. That's not a Christian thing. Never mind. Okay, yeah. Next week, Second Glance, The Appointment. We're gonna explore the twisted mind of Rich Cristiano, Rich Christian, Rich Christ. That sounds like a rapper name. Anyway, cool. And thus ends the tale of Sir Redmond Drumarts and his merry band of podcasters as he now lives his life in isolation in the no longer sunny land of Hollywood.